Welcome back to CBS News coverage of the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. You are watching the motorcade carrying President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump. The Vice President-elect and current Vice President, as well as the First Ladies, are also in that motorcade in different vehicles as they make their way and are arriving now up on Capitol Hill. So we'll watch this very closely as that ceremony will be held inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, where already thousands have arrived, not only in the Rotunda, but in the overflow room known as Emancipation Hall. And that's where our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes, is. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning, Nora. You know, one of the most important, lasting speeches that any president can give is his inaugural address. And it is widely believed that Trump's address back in 2017, when he took office the first time, was pretty dark. The most memorable line from that speech that often gets quoted is about the era of American carnage being over. In fact, former President George W. Bush, who was sitting there on the platform that day, famously said, according to several people around him at the end of the speech, well, that was some weird expletive. But what we have gleaned based on the excerpts we've seen from the speech he's going to give today is that the speech is much lighter, more optimistic than what we heard from him back in 2017. He's going to say, for instance, quote, "I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country." His longtime aide, Jason Miller, spoke to CBS News this morning. He said this is going to be a nuts and bolts speech. He's going to get down to brass tacks pretty quickly to talk about what he wants to do over the course of the next week.
Nancy Cordes, thank you. Now, as you see the presidential motorcade arriving at the east front of the Capitol, let's go to our own congressional correspondent, Scott McFarland. He is right there on the scene. Scott?
About 100 feet away from where the presidents are arriving now in this motorcade. It's quite an image, Nora, to see President Biden and President-elect Trump side by side in the same vehicle, considering just a few hours ago, President Biden signed preemptive pardons to protect people from what he thinks is unjust prosecutions by Donald Trump. That happened the same day they made this ride over to the Capitol. The motorcade comes with a separate vehicle, I think, for the vice president and vice president-elect. As they exit these cars, they're stepping through roughly 10 to 12 degree wind chills and about 20 degree temperatures for the short walk into the Capitol together. The families arrived about an hour ago. The former presidents arrived about 30 minutes ago. This whole show happens inside the Capitol Rotunda. A striking contrast to the image that Nancy described from 8 years ago. Striking contrast from the image of 4 years ago. There go President, President-elect, and the dignitaries into the Capitol, into the Senate carriage entrance from which they'll be ushered into the Capitol Rotunda.
Scott McFarland monitoring that arrival of the presidents now, and we have learned that Donald Trump will call for a revolution of common sense in his inaugural address. That's according to prepared remarks, capping this remarkable political comeback. Also, I can see there in the green coat is Senator Fisher, who is also the Republican co-chair of the inaugural committee, along with Senator Klobuchar, and they were able to ride in the motorcade. You see there the two presidents now entering the United States Capitol to make their way up to the Capitol Rotunda, greeting members of the leadership there and others.
You can be sure that President-elect Trump wrote that line, a revolution of common sense himself. I remember many conversations I've had with him over the years where I said, "You're populist." And he said, "No, Bob, I'm common sense." Common sense, in his view, encapsulates his entire political agenda, his political career. He doesn't want to be seen as a, quote, conservative, but some common sense outsider businessman coming in.
You could see the presidents there, followed by members of the leadership. Let's bring in congressional correspondent Nicole Killian. She's inside the Capitol as we look at some of the tech titans, the head of Google and Elon Musk there as well. And Nicole, what have we learned about the program?
Well, we have learned that, of course, to no surprise to anyone, obviously this will be taking place in the Rotunda as opposed to outside on the west front of the Capitol. Worth noting that it's not unusual for these types of ceremonies to take place at different places throughout the Capitol. Sometimes they have been on the east front, the west front, but in this case, because of the weather, we will see that swearing in ceremony of President-elect Trump in the Rotunda, followed by his inaugural address. And of course, after that, we will see what we always see every 4 years. We saw President-elect Trump and President Biden ride up to the Capitol together, but then following that inaugural address will come that moment where then President Trump will see off President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who you saw earlier in the program, that helicopter there on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. And so at that point, we will see that official transfer of power with President Biden departing and President Trump then remaining here at the Capitol. At that point, he is expected to address an overflow crowd in Emancipation Hall, where our Nancy Cordes is. Of course, again, because this is taking place inside, so many supporters are not able to be here, but there are a few gathered here at the Capitol, in addition to the many lawmakers you see there in the Rotunda. At that point, we expect that the president will participate in a signing ceremony where we do expect him to sign a number of executive orders, both here at the Capitol and at Capital One Arena, where he will join supporters later in the day. Of course, right now we are seeing some of the president-elect's cabinet designees enter. Many of them have already been through confirmation hearings here on Capitol Hill. We have seen many of them here in the halls of Congress. You just saw Pete Hegseth, of course, one of the president-elect's more controversial nominees, but in speaking to several sources, both here on the Hill and with the president-elect's team, they still believe, they're very confident that they believe he will eventually be confirmed, potentially with a vote, at least out of committee, as soon as this week. I would just quickly point out, as you see John Ratcliffe there, he is the president-elect's CIA pick. We could see a vote on him as soon, potentially, as today, along with Marco Rubio, the president-elect's pick for Secretary of State. Norah.